Welcome back to the Restoring Darkness podcast. On today's show, it's Mark and I's great pleasure to be joined by Alona Rodeh. Alona is a Berlin-based visual artist, scenographer, and independent urban practitioner. Rooted in the perception of the nocturnal built environment, her research-driven practices explore material cultures, subcultures, and audio-visual expressions of feelings and safety. She creates large immersive environments that incorporate light and sound, directs short films, publishes research driven artist books, practices night walking, and more. With a focus on the public sphere, she works extensively both within and outside institutions, often collaborating with state and municipal bodies. As an extension of her practice, she advocates for Dark Sky International, an NGO dedicated to restoring nighttime environments and reducing light pollution. Her Nightcaps, sculptures on street lanterns, address light pollution in playful visual terminology. Solo and group shows include, this is a German word, so Kunstmuseum Gelsenkirchen. I think I did pretty good there. Not bad. Not bad. The Guangzhou Biennial, La Caisse Ancedida in Madrid. We're going through a lot of languages here. They're going to be in the show notes at the bottom. There's a couple of them. She installed permanent public artworks in Germany and Israel. Residencies include, among others, a unique year-long residency at the Berlin Fire Brigade. Rodeh's works are included in numerous public collections, including LAS Art Foundation, Tel Aviv Museum, Haaretz Collection, and others. She is represented by Christine Koenig Gallery Vienna and Rosenfeld Gallery Tel Aviv. Social media and website will be in the show notes, but it's alonarodeh.com. Before we get to her, we got to say, listen, this work is not free. Soft Lights Foundation is a nonprofit, and Nailed is a nonprofit, and they support this work. But if you want to donate to this show, you can. You go to restoringdarkness.com, and you can donate to the production of the show. Scott gets paid. I don't. Mark doesn't. We're both volunteers, but the producers get paid, and there's all sorts of fees, so you can help us out that way. Or you can donate directly to the Soft Lights Foundation and support Mark Baker's work. Both places, restoringdarkness.com. Click donate. You can pick the show, or you can pick directly to donate to Mark Baker and the Soft Lights Foundation. And before we get to Alona, Mark, what are you up to these days? Give us a Soft Lights update, brother.
All right, let me tell you about something that happened last week.
All right.
So we've talked on this show about the company called LVT, which makes a video surveillance system, which they put in
Mm-hmm.
the shopping centers. It's a mobile thing with a tower on it, and it has these blue LED lights. Some of them are static, some of them are strobing. And for somebody like me, they're incapacitating. So I encountered one of these devices in a shopping center near me, and I tried to get it turned off. It's very difficult to find out who's in charge when there's just this machine sitting in the shopping center. But I've gotten better at it, and so I've contacted the shopping center owner and LVT themselves, and it was in front of a Jack in the Box restaurant. So I contacted the corporate, and I contacted the franchisee. None of them wanted to turn the lights off, right? They all ignored me. So I said, okay, well, I'm going to let you know that I'm going to file a discrimination lawsuit against you if I can't get these lights turned off. Well, here's the thing that was new to me. So I get a threatening letter from the shopping center owner. Turns out they're in bankruptcy. And this threatening letter says, you can't sue us. We're in bankruptcy. You're immune. There's nothing you can do about it. And if you dare try, we're going to go after you for sanctions in the court for interfering with our bankruptcy. It's like, wow, that was scary. However, the lights are still on. How am I going to get them turned off? So I did my best research, and I said, I don't know. The best way I can still is just go forward with my lawsuit. So I did. And then they said a second threatening letter, said, now you've done it. Now you're really in trouble. We're going to go after you for attorney's fees. And you need to get permission from the bankruptcy court if you're going to sue us. I was like, wow, I got to get permission from the bankruptcy court. So I submit a whole legal thing to the bankruptcy court, and we had a hearing last week.
Get out of here.
And we had a hearings at the bankruptcy court. And what's involved with bankruptcy in America is When there's a bankruptcy, it's called an automatic stay, so that no other entity can sue because they need to sort of stop the bleeding. There's this bankruptcy going on. They need to sort of stop it. But this automatic stay is effective only up until the point where the bankruptcy was filed. If you do something else stupid, or commit a crime or something after the bankruptcy was filed, then that's another issue. So the first thing the judge said to all of us there at this hearing was, "Well, I don't understand. Why can't Mr. Baker sue?" It was so great. So then he directed both parties, me as one party and the shopping center. You come back in 10 days, you file a new brief with me, and you explain to me why Mr. Baker can't sue you. So that was that exciting thing, and that's going on now.
Well, Mark, I love the work I love the way you take it right down to the bottom level, and you're in the courtrooms, you're filing paperwork, and you're doing all the hard work that most people don't want to do. And if you're listening to this out there and you want to make a difference, you can donate to Mark's work, to the Soft Lights Foundation, because he's actually in the nitty gritty of this at the base level. Those blue camera lights, first of all, they are offensive to people that are sensitive to LED light. And the second thing is they are kind of creepy too, actually, those blue lights on camera. So, Mark, my hat's always off to you. You're always way deep in the weeds, and I'd love it if our listeners supported the Soft Lights Foundation. You can go to restoringdarkness.com, click donate, and you can support Mark Baker, who's a warrior for night restoration and darkness restoration. So hats off to you, Mark. Alona, welcome to Restoring Darkness.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
I wanted to talk to you. There's some words in here that I like. The perception of the nocturnal built environment. Can you unpack that phrase for us? Like, what is the perception of the nocturnal built environment? What do you mean when you say you're rooted in that?
Yeah. So the built environment would be anything that is not nature.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not anything. Okay, nature is also can be man-made, but
Mm-hmm.
it's cities, but it's the expanded version of cities. Yeah, because
Mm-hmm.
I'm interested mainly in cities, but to say the built environment is kind of cities and beyond, like everything we build. Wherever we build, usually we have lights. So
Mm-hmm.
the nocturnal city is what I focus on, which is, I mean, I take my research from when I do my night walks, which we might talk about later, I describe them as night as other frontier. There is this essay that was written in 1979 by Melvin titled Night as Frontier, which maybe some of you know, or some people who are interested in the topic know. And he was describing the night as another time and place.
Hmm.
So the nocturnal city is this. It's another place. The
It is.
same park you would go through during the day would some people or most people would not go through to or through during the night. So treating it as another place. That's what these two things are. The built environment is the expanded term of the city, and the nocturnal is the time and place of nighttime in the built environment.
I've been playing with this idea, and I want to bounce it off you before I get to more of the night walks and all that. And this is this transition of humans from a diurnal-only species into something different. It's like we're almost in transition as a species from being diurnal to having an element of us which is nocturnal. There certainly is a lot of human beings that work primarily at night all the time, and sometimes for their entire careers. Artistically, are you seeing this expressed in those urban environments where it's more common? So most people that live in the country or in rural environments would not be nocturnal, that would not express this, but in cities it's probably much more active. Do you see this playing out artistically in your work?
Artistically, it's been playing out in many people's work, from a lot of literature, such as Kafka. I now participated in a group show about Kafka's work, and Kafka was a nocturnal creature, you can say. So from literature, there's many examples to, of course, visual art and music. The whole music industry is maybe not the whole music industry, but consumption is
Mm-hmm.
always during the night, right?
Mm-hmm.
So much of culture happens during the night, and the night is a place when there's less surveillance.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where all the tension is, right? Of like,
Mm-hmm.
people need light or want light to feel safe and to feel secure, but at the same time, the whole idea of living in the night is living with less control and with more freedom. So a lot of subcultures thrive during the night.
You know,
So this tension is a is a cultural thing, and therefore it's mostly referring to cities. And you could really see it when anybody would move to the countryside, even for a month. The whole circadian cycle kind of gets more relaxed and gets more kind of acquainted or more in contact with what the when the night falls and how it affects when we go to sleep.
how do we, when you mention Kafka, I think of Joseph Conrad, Heart of Darkness, as well as describing this darkness when he goes down the Congo River and the beat of the drums at night and all that sort of thing. But that is inherently connected to the fact that it's dark and that there's something mysterious and sublime in that environment, and we're actually driving that sublimity out of the night, especially with LED lights. Does the nocturnal in urban environment, is there a rebellion against electric light, or are they embracing electric light?
Well, I live in Berlin, and my whole research started in Berlin. I was working with lights much earlier because my work is I'm also a scenographer, so I work also in theater, and theater is the ultimate black box. So it's all about creating artificial darkness and then kind of manipulating light in it in magical ways. This is a big part of theater. So that's how I got interested in lights. But then when I moved to Berlin, I discovered a city that is so dark in many ways. Physically, it's dark. It's relatively very dim, very gloomy, kind of. It depends which parts, and I can talk about it a long time about the darkness in Berlin. But generally speaking, for people who come from a place like Israel, which is very overlit, it's shocking that the streets can be so dark. So in Berlin, it started kind of by chance because it's a very poor city originally. It still is relatively poor in Germany, and it went through all these different wars and destruction, and the east and west, and like a third of Berlin is not built. A third of Berlin is either just open places that were never built or parks. So it didn't have a lot of light. And then around the 2000s, they came up with this concept, like a Licht concept, a concept for urban lighting, which was we're not going to make it brighter. We're going to keep this. So it didn't start by design, but it was like, oh, we actually embrace this. And today there's a bit more thought behind it. But initially, it just happened by chance, as a result of the circumstances.
A lot of people don't know that Berlin is one of the darkest major cities in the world, actually. I think it's 60 or 70% from space, less illuminated than, say, Madrid or Paris. It actually is quite less illuminated than other. Maybe that's part of the fact that it's in the eastern side of Germany. So it was I don't know if where was Checkpoint Charlie? I guess Berlin was in the West Germany, but it was in East Germany. I don't know how all that worked actually, but
Well, that's a historical question. I can quickly answer that. So Berlin is in the east, but Berlin itself was split into four.
mm-hmm.
So Russia, France, the UK, and the US. I think so.
Maybe the
But
French.
then the major thing became French. Yeah. US,
French,
Russia. I mean USSR. And French and I think British. But then it became, quite quickly, it became just East and West. So the west of Berlin is like a pocket within the East. Mm-hmm. And the East is indeed very dark, and the East is unified by, and you can still see it from space today, it's unified by sodium lamps, mm-hmm. and the West is gas. Mm. And Berlin was, back in the 30s, pre-Second World War, it was the gas police. Until today, it has one of the biggest it owns so many gas lights still. So it's transitioning to LEDs, but it's a very slow transition. And in the West, you still have a lot of a lot of gas lighting, which is absolutely beautiful.
How does that affect the expression of art? So if people are more accustomed to walking dark streets at night, is it a safer city? Is there I think I had another guest on that told me that there's no difference in safety between Berlin and Madrid. And in fact, it's one of the proofs that electric lighting is not that essential is not a cause nor a solution to crime. It just is what it is. So how is that darkness define the Berlin environment, and this darkness that you said has multi levels to it? How is it? Is the electric street lighting of Berlin actually a part of that greater Berlin German darkness that you're talking about?
Yeah. So as I said, it is today by design to a certain extent. Of course, it's not unified because it's a huge city. It's the territory is very very big of Berlin. It's very spread. It doesn't have so many people living there, but it's very spread. So it's hard to say something about everything together. But first of all, nighttime culture is a big part of Berlin. Well, there's like nightlife in Berlin is huge, and people kind of respect it as dark. It's not so much a consumer city, and it's not so much a business city, and it's not so much a car-oriented city. So all of these things, if you compare it to a city like Stuttgart or Frankfurt, huge difference, huge. It's not. It's a cultural city. There's not a big industry in it, and there's not a big financial part to it. So this really reduces consumption of commercial lights.
Mm-hmm.
No tall buildings, almost at all, for example. So all of these things reduce light pollution from business, from private. And then the public, they do obey. Also, the EU has quite a lot of, like the regulations in the EU, I think it's in a better state than the US. There's regulations around the Kelvin, and there's regulations around I mean, which light in a residential area you cannot put more than 2,700 K, and the shielding and all these things are kind of already introduced. So, in that sense, I think Europe is a bit ahead of um, of the US. But as to your question in particular, there is a more. I don't know for sure, but if I'm guessing that there's more crime in Madrid than in Berlin, it's quite known in Spain. It's as a tourist, it's quite. I mean, the chance of you to get pickpocketed
Yes.
is really quite high. It's not that high in Berlin, not at all. There is, of course, violence, but I don't think it's relatively a safe city. And there's more a sense of responsibility. So if I ride the bike, which I do, I have to make sure I have my bike lights. It's a legal thing that the bike needs to have lights on, but it's also, yesterday I forgot my lights at home and I had a long 45-minute bike ride, and I had to be really careful because I didn't see anything.
Hmm.
So the Germany in general has more this sense of it's your responsibility, you should take care. We're not going to do everything for you, you know? This is the this is the thought. In my opinion, that's my how I see it.
I've been trying to, you know, poke at people that have clearly define a relationship between light and safety. I don't think that that is as clear as we think it is. I think that darkness also brings a type of safety as well. I think both introduce an aspect of safety, with darkness being unrecognized and light being over acknowledged as an element of safety. When you're practicing your night walking, are you doing this in the urban environment in Berlin, or is it rural, or is it both?
Yeah, so it's usually in cities. It started in Berlin, but I did it in many different cities. I did it in Brussels and in Paris and in Tel Aviv and in Malmo, Sweden, and in other cities in Germany, etc., etc. So I basically do it wherever I'm invited if I can find darkness. So the idea is to find darkness and to enter it. So usually, if we would see next to where my studio is, I'm in my studio now, there's a big park. And this park is not lit at night. And this is something which is quite not unique about Berlin, but quite special in comparison to other metropolises, which is that there's like two or three street lamps, and then it's dark. So usually it would be either lit at night or closed. So that's how it is in Paris, that's how it is in Brussels. So it's this feeling of like, this is a dark space and we're not going to let you in because it's dangerous. But in Berlin, and you can find it elsewhere as well, it's just go and see what happens. And if you actually go there, you will find that there's quite a lot of people there who enjoy being off the radar and doing whatever they do at night. Not necessarily, I mean, there's the drug thing, but like selling drugs, but there's less and less of it because people are usually now buying drugs through apps. So going to the park is not such a And then also with stuff like cruising, it also went through the apps. So no, public space today is a bit different than it would be in the 90s, I would say. But my concept for the night walks is there's a few principles. The first is that there's no talking during the walk. So I do a few stops, and in the stops, I describe some stuff, or we do some exercises of dazzling and looking and whatever. It really depends on location. But during the walk, which usually takes between an hour and an hour and a half, there's no talking, which makes a huge difference because then people can actually concentrate and listen and see what they manage to see. So it's a bit for safety reasons, but it's also it's a meditation on the nocturnal city. That's one thing. Second thing is that you're recommended to wear dark clothes so you don't stand out. Which this is a bit of a joke about Berlin because in Berlin, nighttime, nightlife, everybody wears black. So it's kind of an unwritten rule. So it's a bit of a joke about that, but it's mainly that if you walk in a group of 30 or 40 people, which is what it is, it's actually very popular, these night walks, then you don't want anything to jump out, like some orange hat or something. So that's the second thing. And then I always do something around sunglasses and wearing a cap, which has to do with the nightcaps topic. But every time the content changes because it really has to do with the location and with the route that I build. It's quite thoroughly thought of and quite different each time.
When it's interesting that you talk a lot about sound as well. And Mark and I have been exploring the relationship between sound pollution and light pollution. They seem to go very closely together. And so, in this meditative walk, you're inviting people to listen to the sounds of the nocturnal urban environment. How are they impacted by this?
Yeah, so I agree. I definitely see the connection, and in my works also that are not directly related to this topic, I work a lot with sound and light. So they kind of, to me, it goes very, very much together. First of all, it changes by season. If we go to parks, then usually in winter, it would be more exposed. So the leaves that fall, because in Berlin the leaves fall in fall. So in summer it's more protected. So it's darker and there's less sound pollution coming from the sides. Yeah. In winter it's more exposed, so everything is brighter and the sound is stronger. And it's really, you can hear it, the light pollution would be, I mean, the parallel would be this hum of the vehicles, mainly.
Hmm.
So when you enter a dark spot, you always will still feel it. Will still have a sense of direction and have a sense of this hum coming from different angles. So it's like creeping in, same as the light pollution creeps in. So you're never, when I say looking for darkness, yes, it's places that are not lit, but it's always an example somehow of light pollution and noise pollution.
Alona, Alona, I'm just sort of fascinated. The way you've described Berlin, it's dramatically different than here in the U.S. Or in many other cities. When I see on the news, there's a horrific stuff occurring. You mentioned Israel. I see a reporter in the news. They're in Israel, and it's just so bad in the glare, the blue rich light, and they fuzz it out in the background, but there's just blinking lights everywhere. There's police car lights, and then there's often mobs of people underneath blue rich lights, which we believe makes them more agitated. And I often think when I watch the
100%.
news, yeah, I would think, well, why don't they just turn off all those lights and everybody would go home and it would be safer. And so to hear you talk about, I'm kind of jealous of Berlin. It sounds terrific that you could go and that there would be a dark park. So I'm just sort of blown away that there's this sort of even a thought process in Berlin that they're doing it on purpose. Nobody's really like so upset about it. It's okay. They can get around, and that people who like the nightlife can go out and enjoy the nightlife, but with it doesn't have to be glary. So that was one comment. I took a look at your website and I saw a couple of photos. I want to tell a little story and then let you comment about your night walks. So in one of your photos there, you have two photos contrasting. One is oh well, let me tell my little story first. So these iPhones have can, a flash on it, which you can turn on to use like a flashlight, but it's very high Kelvin blue rich. One time I was looking at a property and a real estate agent got a phone call, and rather than the phone ringing, it turned on this flashlight thing, and it struck me in the eyes and it knocked me to the ground. I actually literally fell onto my knees, and then I felt like I
Oh my
wanted to
God.
vomit. Yeah, it was like, and so it took minutes to recover, and then for hours after that. So this kind of light is very impactful, and other people we know will suffer migraines, and we know other people will suffer seizures when exposed. Okay, so that's the story. Now on your website, you have this contrast. You have about 10 people. They've all turned on their LED flashlight on their iPhones and they're shining it in their eyes. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what are you doing? And then your other
I know.
photo shows with candlelight. And I'm like, oh, put me in the candlelight, but don't put me in the iPhone thing. I will not survive. So, can you tell us about what you're doing there? What's going on?
Yeah. So, generally during the walks, there's none of this, not the LED light and not the and not the candlelight at all. These both are moments of maybe a half a minute or something of demonstration. So in the one with the iPhone, it was with a group of students that I'm sure are pretty used to. They're like Berlin students. I'm pretty sure they're used to flashing lights. So we were walking in a dark area, and after a while, I did this exercise, which was to dazzle one another. And
Dazzle.
this dazzling one another is like a few seconds, and then you turn it off altogether. And this is kind of a demonstration of what happens to insects, actually, that we can get dazzled, and after a minute or a few minutes max, we will balance, except people who are very sensitive to it. But after a few moments or minutes, you are kind of can get used to darkness again. But the insects, these ones that get entangled in the street lamps, are, for them it can take between an hour and 3 hours. That's what I was told by a scientist from the Leibniz Institute here, who's also related to the Nightcaps project. So they get so dazzled that they cannot leave the light because it looks completely dark outside. So they're like, they lose their orientation. So the demonstration is to demonstrate that. So of course it's a bad thing to do, but it's a part of the practice. The second one of the candles is a different story, and it was kind of about, of course, it was going through the two only lights that don't disturb our circadian cycle, which are the candles and moonlight. And to take the candles was we did a moment of silence. Again, anyway, we're silent, but a moment of kind of looking at these lights as the ultimate warmth. Yeah, the old lights, the older you go, the warmer the light is, like we cannot touch it, right? And now the LED you can hold in your hand and it's not even warm. So to kind of feel this gap between the warm one and the completely cold one, and to do the connection also between the physical heat and the warm color and the cold color, like the blue range. So that's where this was coming from, and the connection to the war was that the lower you go inside the tunnels, the less oxygen you have, and the less oxygen you have, the light will, the candle will blow off. So in Berlin, there's this mythology, because in early times, like in the 90s in Berlin, they were doing all these parties in bunkers, in old Nazi bunkers. And when there were too many people in the room, they would put there was no light, and they would put a candle. And when there were too many people in the room, the candle would fade out. So that was a sign that, like, we need to get some oxygen in and some people out. Yeah. So it's a lot of different cultural and political also connections.
The before we go to the nightcaps, which I wanted to talk to you more about, do you have a feeling that that humans have a relationship to fire that is very deep in our souls? That there's something about fires and candlelight and actual that heat in that artistic expression that is somehow a part of what we've become today. And the parallel to that is the light pollution or high Kelvin LED lights is like a negative expression, like we've moved away too far from fire and from our connection to it. And that part of that is like this 5,000 Kelvin overlit cities and all this kind of stuff is an expression of overreach, of going too far in one direction. Did you feel that in your artistic work? I don't know exactly how to describe what I'm talking about, but you're grounded in that candlelight. And then but in the 5,000K street light, you're overstimulated. There's something wrong with it. And is there do you feel that as well? And I don't know how to describe it, but there's something to it in our primordial souls that's being offended by that. Do you agree?
Mm-hmm. I agree 100%. I grew up also in the countryside, and I grew up making fires as like one of the things I loved the most, to just make the fire work, lit it up, and it's primal, and it's like the perfect screensaver in a way, a fire, because you can always look into it and always kind of, stare into it and lose yourself in it in a positive way. So I think we would all agree here that that the direction things are going is not doing us so well. And of course, once you are more conscious of it, as I became more conscious of it, I became so much more sensitive, which is kind of good and bad, because now I suffer in many spaces in the evening that I just don't want to get into. That's why I always have my sunglasses and my cap on, not on, but in my bags, so if I need it at night. So I feel it in my body, and in my also the way I educated myself on the topic. But I think that it's a generation that's disappearing, because there's less and less of natural fire to experience as a kid and stuff. When I was a kid, we didn't have babysitters where I grew up in. Let's put it that way.
I think that what
So
you
we were just doing stuff.
Yeah, well, I didn't either. But I think the effect of losing oneself in a phone or a television or a computer, is the same thing, except it's there. There's no absence of stimulation. Like when you stare into a fire, there's like you're kind of drawn into yourself in a way and your own thoughts. And when you stare into a phone or a computer or a TV, you're drawn into the thoughts of others, and you're open to manipulation, and you're open to messaging and 1984-ish kind of stuff, and the people are watching these things at night in the same way they might be watching a fire even 100 years ago or 150
Yeah.
years ago. And there's something
Yeah.
dark in that. There's like and when I say it's light, but there's a darkness there, like a heart of darkness, like I was talking about Joseph Conrad. There's like you're going into a place where it's all sinful. There's nothing good. There's nothing wholesome there. And it's also bad for you. It's also unhealthy for you in so many different ways. And I don't know, I feel that you and I kind of agree on that. And in your explorations, in your art, you're exploring that the nocturnal environment is in its own way welcoming, should not be feared in a way. Am I correct about that?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I think you're touching upon a topic that is what makes this more and more challenging is that we can discuss with cities, with municipalities, with states, with, in my case, the EU, certain parameters and certain rules that should be obeyed in public illumination. But it's the public illumination can be perfect and can be the most minimal and the warmest and soft and everything, but then people go home and what they have at home, what they use at home from their lights at home, but especially their screens, is what can, throw everything to the trash. As in, throw all the work that was done outside doesn't matter, because when you go home and you go into bed and you go into bed with your phone full on and until the moment you go to sleep. So it doesn't matter what happens outside. You see what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like at the level of like, even if everything is completely correct in the public sector, in the private sector, it's still in the people's private homes and private beds, it's kind of lost.
There's
We lost
something
the we
there's
lost
something
this
very
war.
strange about us, when you think about it. There's like the way how much when people say I don't vote because nothing changes, I look at them and say, what are you talking about? So much has changed in my life. I'm only 47 years old, and I've seen drastic changes. Some of them are good, some of them are really bad, some of them are okay. And one of those changes is like this relationship to electronics, which goes everywhere with you. And at the fundamentally why we're drawn to it has something to do with humans gazing at light. There's something with gazing into light, which is hypnotic and seductive. And in the past, that would have made us feel, maybe safe and warm and close to one another and perhaps romantic and other areas. And now it's isolating and it's loneliness and it's separatedness. It's like but the same instinct for us to be close to fire is tricking us to be close to electronics or something.
Yeah, and I think in the last, I mean, I'm the same generation as you, and I think in the last, let's say, 10 years or like 15 years, it's reaching levels of hypnosis. Like now, you see it with kids, of course. It's levels of hypnosis, but not only kids, that are the whole peripheral view is like disappearing. It's just like only channeled eyesight, like the whole perception of space. I mean, that's what I work on also a lot and with students and such, just to have to read the space around us, to read as in to understand why neighborhoods are designed this or that way, what leads to another, like the thoughts behind the space around us, why it was designed this way and how it developed and how it grew like naturally. That's what a lot the Nightcaps project, the neighborhood where this is installed, is about. These are things that people are already, they don't see them at all, because they're so narrowly focused on their phones. So
And I'm
it's a big
looking at
topic.
pictures. Yeah, I'm looking at your pictures of the nightcaps. And I'm going to ask
Yeah.
you about them because they all look very unique. It looks like there's different artistic expressions going on with each one. But I wanted to get one more thought just on what we were just talking about there. And maybe Mark, maybe this would interest you as well. I have 4 children, And the most common reason for outdoor electric light pollution or night pollution, I like to call it night pollution rather than light pollution because I think it's the night that's being polluted. But I don't want to confuse people at the same token.
I've
Um,
heard that. I've heard that. Yes, from you.
oh, and then the reason given is that it's for safety. But you know what's interesting? The reason why we give phones to children is also for this same reason of safety. You know what I mean? It's like we give you this poisoning electric light so you can introduce you to all the darkness in human nature to yourself. So in the name of safety. And that's just, I just occurred to me right now when you were talking about it. I thought, gosh, and it's all done in the name of safety. And it's
Yeah.
very strange. Facebook also, defined itself in terms of connection to others. It's actually anti-connection. It's like the opposite is true. The most dangerous thing you can do is put a phone in your kid's hands, actually. I'm just, when you
Yeah.
think about it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, this is like one challenge. I don't have kids, and this is one challenge. I would not know what to do. This whole thing with phones and kids, it's a slippery slope. Whatever you do, it's really complicated. But just to add another comment on that has to do with Mark, what you were saying about Israel. Incredible light pollution there. Basically, and most of Israel is very influenced by our neighbors, and in most Arab countries and also along coasts, usually there's much more light pollution. But in Israel, it became more also because of this topic of safety that became so central, put it gently. Uh, Plus zero awareness. There's no awareness at all. But there was one research that came out of Israel, completely unrelated, like an academic research, that I find just the best example of what this whole difficult topic of safety and lighting means. So they tested one street in Haifa and kind of put in or like two streets that are similar, and in one they put a lot of lights, and in one they put kind of more the minimum amount of lights. And the result was that it's the same, as in if people were feeling safe. It was about feelings of safety. So people were feeling just the same if they had the minimum amount of light and they had more light, which means that there's this plateau. To say that we don't need lights at all would be, in places where people live, would not make sense for most people. But to have just a bit and the right amount, and maybe on timers, if it's an area with not a lot of people and stuff, with sensors, this is what we need, right? We don't. It's not 100 or zero. But this example of this thinking about this plateau of like same feeling of safety with a bit or with a lot, it says it all for me.
In Paris, they did a study where they put street lighting on lighting controls, and they had the neighborhood people download an app. And so they told them that the lights are going to dim down. I don't know. I can't remember. I'm just roughly describing it. But the lights will dim down 80, 90%. But if you want to, you can turn them back up. And that eliminated all anyone's concern about the level of light in the neighborhood because they felt this sense of control over the light. But in the end, the lights were off 90% of the time, or they were fully dimmed most of the time, because when people went outside, they felt like there was enough light. Human eyes are actually extremely sensitive to light. We're able to see it quite clearly. So, yes, where that plateau is, Alona, we don't know yet. Where it is. And I think we have a lot to learn about light. To finish up, tell us a little bit about this Nightcaps project. How did it come about? How many artists are involved? Does everyone kind of do their own thing? Are you allowed to do this? Is this kind of a protest movement? Are you kind of, breaking some regulations? Tell us all about it.
No, it's all completely legal.
Okay, good.
So, yeah, it's all completely legal and it's only me. All the works are mine.
Okay.
So the work started in 2021. Actually, I was invited for a group exhibition in outdoor spaces, titled "Current Art and Urban Spaces." Now maybe I'm not saying it exactly right. And they told me, go to the city and have a look around and see what you find. So I went to this park, and in this park there were these lights, which are these globe lights,
Mm-hmm.
which are present in many, many places. I don't know how it is in the US, but here you have them in many cities, mostly in pedestrian areas. So they were installed between the 60s and 90s everywhere. Also in Israel, there's a lot of them. And and then I proposed to, I don't know, this idea came up because I was like, the park is so dark, and then you have these lights. It doesn't make any sense. They're like nice and everything. They look very harmless, but they still emit light 360 degrees. So
Mm-hmm.
I propose to do these like three artworks that are look like some variation on caps that will shield the light from going up. So I did it there. It was installed for 3 weeks, and they didn't want to keep. I mean, the agreement was for 3 weeks. We thought maybe they would want to keep them there. They didn't want to, the city. So they went back to the studio, and they stayed here for a long time. And then I moved to live in the neighborhood where my studio is. My studio is here in the neighborhood called Brunnenviertel. It's in Wedding, which is in West Germany, West Berlin. It's a very working class neighborhood, and then after having my studio here for a long time, I moved to a very close, like still in the same neighborhood. And then I said, wow, I just have to do something about these lights because they're installed in many, many inner courtyards and in between the houses and stuff. And the neighborhood is maybe, I don't know, 70-80% social housing. And this social housing comes from one company, and they own these street lamps. So I actually applied with some project, with some funding from the city, from Berlin, and I didn't get it. But it took so long to have a meeting with this company, which is a huge company. They have like 800,000 units in Berlin. It's called Degevo. So it took time to get a meeting. Until I got the meeting, I knew already I didn't get the funding. But I was like, well, I'm not going to cancel the meeting. So I talked to them, and they were so excited. They were so interested. And I was like, well, if you want, you can pay for it. So that's what happened, which is pretty surprising. And then we installed 9 of them last year. We actually installed 10, but one disappeared miraculously. That was in October 2024, and it got really good responses from so many different sources, like, of course, local residents, but also a lot of press. Like, it went to the Deutsche Presseagentur, which is like AP.
Mm-hmm.
So it went to all the newspapers, and a lot of like different scientists and organizations around ecology, and like really interesting. And then they were so happy about it, this housing company, that they invited me to do it again. So we did 6 more now, quite recently, a month or 2 months ago. And they also want to do more next year. And I'm thinking maybe to do something else, like in another area, or I don't know, because I have to change. I have to do new things all the time. So we'll see what happens next. But it's brewing some really, really nice collaborations that will go further beyond what's happening here. So the idea was there were a group of school children, a group of families, and then another group of more kind of activists, people interested in the ecological aspect, etc. And everybody could come up with ideas, and based on them, some of them, based on them, we did the new designs.
And I always love to have artists on the Restoring Darkness podcast. They always show us a different angle on these kinds of things. And, I thank Alona Rodeh for being a guest on Restoring Darkness today. Thank you so much. And
My pleasure.
if you've listened to this show and you enjoy it, you can go to restoringdarkness.com, and why not support Mark Baker? I mean, we're good here. We take care of Scott. He does some other shows that have a lot of revenue to them, so he gets paid by them. But you can always donate to Restoring Darkness, the show, by going to restoringdarkness.com/donate. Click it. But you can donate to Mark Baker and his work. He's really on the front lines of all people in the movement of night preservation, darkness restoration, these kinds of things, dark skies. Some people call it dark skies. There's all sorts of different names. But Mark Baker is doing the most work on the front lines, talking about headlights and weird blue security lights and digging into the legal ramifications and actually getting stuff done. So if you want to help him out, you go to restoringdarkness.com and click donate. Thank you for listening. I truly, and also, share this with other people. If you enjoyed the show, you can share it, like, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. Thank you out there for listening. Bye for now.